Welcome to the French Drain Man channel. I'm your host, Robert Sherwood. We were doing an installation and we got hit by a really dense cell. It created a flash flood, but it also provided some amazing footage showing a pop-up emitter in action. Now, the number one problem with pop-ups, the grass will grow over them, and then they can't discharge the water. This has been an industry problem for decades and decades, and nobody's done a thing about it. I think the reason why nobody's done a thing about it, in order to do a really significant turf restrictor plate, you're going to use 10 times the material. And this is not what companies want to hear. They want to make a small pop-up emitter and use the smallest amount of material and have that pop-up emitter cost as little as possible so that they can maximize their bottom line. The pop-up emitter is the number one go-to, number one choice for discharging water because it doesn't hold a lot of water. When you go to a 6-inch speedy basin or a 9-inch or a 12-inch for discharge because you don't want the grass to grow over your discharge and prevent your system from working. The problem is these bigger basins hold so much water. It becomes a real problem for mosquitoes. Earthworms, for whatever reason, end up in them. They end up really, really smelling bad. It's not fun at all. So we got away from the pop-up for that very reason. We got away from the pop-up because the grass grew over it, and we went to all those bigger basins. The problem is those basins hold water. That water gets rank, and then if you're in the north, it's going to freeze solid. So let me show you the pop-up emitter. The pop-up emitter don't hold no water. See how small it is? Now, we have 3 different pop-up emitters here, the 90 degree, the 45 degree right there. You can see it's less water than the 90 degree. The 90 degree is going to hold more water in the line. So if you got a little break and a little bit of slope, it's really beneficial to take it to a 45 degree pop-up. Now, if you're going to a ditch bottom or something, take a 22.5 degree, a 22.5 right here. Look, it's straight. That line ain't going to hold no water. That's beautiful. All these varieties we do with the turf restrictor plate. The turf restrictor plate, the number one complaint with the pop-up, and the reason why I got away from it for so many years, the grass would just grow over it. It wouldn't function. It wouldn't be able to pop up. So for me, that's a big liability. I'm in the drainage business. I go there and I fix drainage problems. I can put the very best systems in the world, and then when the grass grows over a pop-up, it can't discharge. That's not good. So I did get away from the pop-up emitter for a long, long time. We were going to just big basins for discharge because it took forever for the grass to grow over this 12 by 12. It just took forever. Problem is they hold too much water. It breeds a lot of mosquitoes. And in the north, this big bucket of water, you're asking too much of clay. Now, clay can perk a little bit of water, like the little bit of water that's left in this little pop-up. We'll drill a hole in the bottom of this pop-up, and that little pop-up, that will be able to drain in the clay. Clay does take in a little bit of water. That's why it goes from concrete to mud. Now, this big basin, this is a huge pail. That's what this is, a huge bucket. You can drill holes in the bottom, and you can do everything right, and you can put stone all around it, but the fact remains when winter comes, that thing freezes as a block of ice, and it's breeding mosquitoes, which isn't safe for your children and pets, your family, your health. All right, so the turf restrictor plate changed everything. Back to pop-ups. Loving it. Everything's pop-ups. 22.5 degree, 45 degree, or a 90 with a turf restrictor plate. Now, if you want to reduce the amount of water the 90 holds, go to a 3-inch. And let me explain. The 4-inch is going to hold more water. It just is. It's bigger. It's bigger in diameter, noticeably, than the 3-inch. Everybody's like, well, this is going to slow down my flow. No, it won't. Fluids does not work that way when you're dealing with fluids. So I'm a self-taught guy. I didn't go to school for, an engineering degree in fluid dynamics. However, I study fluid dynamics because it's directly related to what it is I do. So it's called the mass flow rate. Look it up, Google it, mass flow rate. You got a 4-inch line, you got all this kinetic energy, and you got the water just moving. It hits a 3-inch piece right here. What happens is the fluid just speeds up in the 3-inch, but it will not slow down the mass flow rate. So if you go to a 3-inch in the north, you got even less water left behind. You just drill a little hole in the bottom. That amount will perk. This will never freeze up in the winter. All right, guys, hope you learned something. Until that next video. There's a lot of contractors that won't use a spring-loaded pop-up. They just really believe that there's too much resistance. So when the water pressure becomes less towards the end of a rain, the spring's going to keep water in a line. I don't feel that way. I know when the water slows down, whatever water's going to run out, it's going to run out. Water weighs, for round numbers, it's like 8 pounds per gallon. When you got PSI, pounds per square inch, a light-duty spring is not going to be an issue. So I don't shun them, but there are a few things to consider with the spring. So the spring, it's really nice because it retracts, and then the lawnmowers won't have any, problems going over top of it. It'll just always be down in. Now, the one negative I would say to a pop-up, in order to have a spring in the middle of a pop-up emitter, you have this brace going across it. So think about that. Your opening is split in half with a bar of plastic that goes across it so that it can support a spring in the center. And some of them actually have more than just a bar across it. Some of them have like a forked bar, so it's like you end up with 3 triangles, if you will, or 3 fan-shaped areas of the pop-up. Now, leaves get caught on those. So that's one thing that, that's one negative that I find. This here is a hinged pop-up. I like the hinged pop-up because it has the widest opening and there's no bars going across it. So there's no way that a tree branch, can get hung up in there. Now remember, if you have trees around your house, when the wind blows, you end up with sticks on the roof. When that stick or branch hits the roof, it shatters. The small pieces always end up in the gutter. I know this because I'm the guy that's having to clean them out and remove these sticks. This big mouth will let the stick come out freely.